Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Beyond Second Cognition. I'm Beall. The topic of this discussion is, how do I become myself? This is a question that probably nags a lot of you. So I'm going to provide some explanations. We've covered quite a bit of this in the books, but this is going to be more of a short form presentation for those that are new to the material. This doesn't take the place of reading the books. It's just a snapshot version of what you can find in the books, particularly the Psychology of Becoming Human and Demystifying the Mystical book and Navigating into the Second Cognition. There's a lot of things that bother people, and one of the biggest things is the sense that you have to have a purpose in life, as if you have a singular purpose, the one thing you're here as a human being on planet Earth to do. I got news for you. There's no such single purpose for anyone. Your purpose changes as your life changes. And in general, you choose your purpose and what you want to do with your life. Sitting around and waiting for someone to tell you your purpose, waiting for some magical, mystical knock on the door to tell you what your purpose should be, sitting in angst wondering what that purpose will be when it shows up, just drives you nuts. It's a fruitless endeavor. So the first thing you can do to start figuring out how to become yourself is quit getting wrapped up in all this purpose nonsense. Everybody's purpose changes. One time my purpose was making music, and then my purpose was writing books, and my purpose was making videos along with writing books. So I picked my purpose along the way. At one time I raised children. That was my purpose. You have to realize that your purpose is going to vary accordingly, and you're in charge of what you make your purpose to be. So when you start taking charge of your own life and choosing your own purpose, and realizing that living your life is the only purpose you really have, then all this sweating over some kind of mystical purpose to save the world, some bullshit hero mentality, fades into the background, and you lose that anxiety. We've expressed repeatedly in our videos that in order to become who you are, to find out who you are, that you have to challenge everything. And for those of you who haven't figured this out yet, everything you think you are, what shapes the false ego personality, is basically secondhand information. Somebody told you what you should like or what you shouldn't like. Your parents or your religion or your culture or some thousands of year old history book or spiritual tradition or religious tome. So you take everybody else's word for it and you shape this fake identity, and you don't really know who you are because you're dealing with secondhand information. You didn't shape who you are. Your culture shaped it, and your parents shaped it, and your religion shaped it, and your political ideology shaped it. So when you have all of these layers of secondhand information that comprise this fake identity, how much of it is really you? How much have you really gone out and discovered for yourself, or how much have you had your mind made up by other people because they said so? The more you start analyzing all of your ideas and beliefs, you're going to find out that just about everything you think you know and everything you think you are is predicated on hearsay. So the false ego personality, the residual of the Hapim virus, is nothing but an echo of what came before. The traditions passed down. We keep doing it because it's always been that way. Or this is what our religion says you must do. Or this is what our political party says you must do. And when you buy into that stuff, you tack it on to the fake ego, and you give up part of yourself and replace it with hearsay evidence presented by somebody else, some fucking authority, some academic, some preacher, some politician. And the more you do that, the more you lose you. So the more you bury yourself, the more crap you have to dig out from under to figure out how to become who you are. This is why this internal self-analysis is required. You have to pick apart everything you think you believe about yourself and find out how little there really is there that makes up the ego self. It's labels, it's tags, it's identifiers, it's somebody else telling you, and you glom onto it and make it yours. But the fact of the matter is, the real you just keeps getting buried further and further below these labels and tags and descriptions. So you wind up being nothing but a walking collection of descriptions plugged into you and adopted by you on somebody else's say-so. How much do you believe or embrace or think based on your own ideas without somebody else coming up with the mandate, the dogma, the teachings, the political stance? When you start tearing this stuff apart, you're going to find out that you're nothing but a patchwork of somebody else's descriptions. Now I'm going to talk about where you're going with the second cognition. People have a false presumption of knowledge. Mostly knowledge is a collection of memorized, concatenized data. Just because someone can spout profound philosophers or long passages from the Bible or whatever doesn't mean they know this. It just means that they have memorized it really well and they can spout it back at you. That's not knowledge. Knowledge comes when you own what you know, not just repeating what others said to impress others because you have a great memory and can recite this shit back to them like a fucking parrot. If you look at your intellectuals and your academics, this is what they do. They say, well, Nietzsche said, and Jung said, and Freud said, or whatever. And they don't really understand what the meaning was behind a lot of what they said, but they can sure spout you the quotes left and right. Now, just because you can quote somebody, because you've memorized certain passages or certain ideas, and you can't put your own stamp of understanding on it, you're just repeating it. This is not knowledge. This is memorization and confusion. When you can see these things and read through them and quit speculating and start knowing, as I've done with some of the Nietzsche work, I'm not spouting Nietzsche to say, well, this is what Nietzsche says. I'm coming back and saying, and this is what he means. If you listen to a lot of these other philosophers, they can tell you what he says, but they can only speculate what he means because they don't know it, because they have not owned it. So they're spouting suspicions and conceptual ideologies, but they don't know what was really being said. And that's the difference between owning knowledge and spitting out collected data. When you know what you know through your experiences, when you transcend to the second cognition, you don't have to rely on quotes from other people. The only reason I use quotes in any of my books is to prove a point to people that are so dependent on authority citations that they have to have a second word for it. They say, show me the evidence. My say-so is not good enough, so I want to see who else says something similar. And this is how the whole academic system is set up, with peer review. You can't say anything on your own unless somebody else said it first. That's what the whole peer-reviewed system is. Try and come up with an original idea without citing peer-reviewed sources in an academic environment, and they'll laugh you out the doorway. Because they don't want original thinking. They don't want new thought. They want you to perpetuate the same old thought. This is another way that you find yourself. It's when you can drop the second-hand stuff, use it for reference to expand your own knowledge and knowing, not just conceptual speculation. Because when you know a topic, you can talk the topic and you can teach the topic. This is why with my scripts these days, I don't write them anymore. I don't have to. When you know what you know, then you can present it with a solid foundation of knowing. It can be presented in many different allegorical fashions if necessary, because the knowledge is there. You're not speculating and you're not having to rely on what somebody else says to shape your ideas. And this is how you find out who you are, how you become yourself. It means finding original ideas, not repeating everything that's come before incessantly and calling it knowledge. As you put your beliefs under a microscope and you start analyzing why you think what you think, why you believe what you believe, and why you think that shapes you as an individual, you are going to find that you are shaped more and more by external forces than you ever dreamed. You're going to find out that the real you, whoever that may be, is so buried under conjecture and hearsay and cultural programming and tradition and religion and politics that you don't even know who you are. And this is why when I've stated in my previous videos that you don't know who you are, I know exactly what I'm talking about. Because you're nothing but a walking set of labels. In order to become who you are, you have to analyze these labels and sort through them and say, does this serve me or not? And if it doesn't serve you, then you need to reanalyze and set it aside, transcend it. Because if it stands in the way of who you are or who you want to be, and you're just doing it because somebody else told you to, or because a part of you agrees with it, because a group agrees with it, that you're just complying with the herd mentality, whatever that herd may be, then that's not you. That's part of the herd. You're just another herd beast. So you're not you. You cannot be yourself. You cannot be a free, autonomous individual as long as you are running with the herd. As long as you agree with the herd and have to get out and take care of the herd for the greater good. Exhibit all that compassion for the greater good and exhibit no compassion for yourself. Color within the lines. That's the mandate of the herd. Don't you dare be who you are unless you agree with us. And it doesn't matter which herd it is, because everything's a herd. Every goddamn religion's a herd. Every political ideology is a herd. Every culture is a herd. Traditions create herds. And herds monitor themselves. And when you adopt the herd mentality in your own mind, when you become the collection of labels, you don't need an external force. You police yourself, and your mind becomes prisoner to the labels and to the descriptions that others give you and tell you what you have to do. They have to pass laws to control herds because the individual can't control themselves without a law that says you have to control yourself. When you move into the second cognition, you don't need any laws. You know better. That's called taking responsibility for yourself. There's no victims in this. There's nobody doing anything to you. Yes, life is tough. We all get thrown curveballs. But what we do in the face of those curveballs is what makes us who we are. It'll either make you stronger, or if you buy into the victim mentality, it'll make you weaker. Personally, I'm not a victim. My life is no different than any of yours. I get all sorts of surprises in life that just come up. Situations that I don't care for, but I have to deal with. The difference is I don't let them crush me. I come up with a way to get around it and keep going forward. And every time I transcend a situation, I get stronger for it. But it's not because anybody's doing to me. It's because life is full of surprises, and they're not always pleasant, and they're not always fun, and it's not always somebody doing it to you as much as it is situational. So you can live your life claiming to be a victim, living in the patterns of 3,000 years of shit that's gone before, never wanting to change. I'm not going to change it because the Bible tells me so, or the political ideology tells me so, or I'm going to join this group because it enhances my victim personality, like the feminists and the gays and whatever the case may be at the moment, you know, whatever political hot button they got going on. You know, it's all herd shit. See it for what it is. And if you're part of the herd, then you're part of the problem. You'll never be a free, autonomous individual as long as you're a herd beast. In order to become yourself, you have to wade through all these layers of psychological bullshit. You have to have the courage to see this stuff within you and say, I'm not going to do that anymore because that's not who I am. That's what somebody else told me I should be. And when you can transcend this stuff, then that's how you become who you are, and not until. Every psychoanalyst and psychologist knows that the burden of healing the mind is on the patient. You want to become who you are, you have to become your own psychoanalyst. You have to look at this shit in your own mind. And you have to realize that just because you can't find some whimsical purpose in your life doesn't mean that your life is a bust. It means you've got your expectations pinned to a false kite that doesn't go anywhere. You keep looking for the purpose, and yet every day you're living it and missing the purpose because you're looking for some whimsical idea of a purpose. And because you can't find your purpose, oh, you get all depressed. This is how the pattern works. There is no purpose. There is no greater good except in the herd environment, and there is no freedom of the individual within the herd. You're just another herd beast. So I thought I'd give these pointers for those that could use the additional help in identifying their own internal cognitive garbage heap. And for those of you doing the work, stay the course. Don't give up on yourselves.